Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's Q&As. There aren't too many questions this week, and that's okay with me because I am so deep into 3 videos that I hope to get out to you all within the next week, and everything keeps going wrong. Console stopped working, randomly one stopped outputting composite video for a comparison, and it's not even video related. Like, I went to take a shower, and I look and there's no water in the toilet, and then I realized it was clogged. So I had to sit there, just plunging away, wondering, like, does John Linneman go through this? Is he making some million-view Digital Foundry video and has to stop to plunge his own freaking toilet? So, I don't know. I guess I've had a streak of weird luck this week, but I'm excited for the videos. I'm always excited to do the Q&As, regardless if there's 100 questions or one. And I guess I'm venting a little bit because you kind of just gotta laugh at yourself, especially when plungers are involved. But anyway, let's jump right into the Q&A. First up is a giant apology to Krebstar, who apparently posted a question 2 weeks in a row on YouTube, and they kept getting flagged as spam, which is baffling because nothing about these questions should be flagged as spam. There's no links or swears or anything in there. So thank you, Krebstar, for reaching out. I'm really sorry about that. And if I'm missing anybody else's questions, please find a way to contact me. Probably through any of the support services is the most direct way. But honestly, I don't ignore questions at all. It's always a mistake. So anyway, to answer 2 weeks late the question, Krebstar is looking to purchase a GameCube and Game Boy player exclusively to play Game Boy Advance and Game Boy Color games via the Game Boy interface. Awesome. The question is, what's the best or most cost-effective way to do this? To get a NTSC Game Boy player and use S-Video until biting the bullet and using the official component or insurrection cables, or get a PAL GameCube and use the RGB cables you already have? Also, Krebstar has been having problems figuring out if the Game Boy players themselves are region locked, even though the Game Boy Advance games are not. Okay, I'll start with the easiest first. I have a Game Boy player from Japan, the actual hardware, and I have a US one, and they seem to be perfectly interchangeable. I don't know about PAL, but I have absolutely, without a doubt, used NTSC Game Boy player hardware on PAL GameCubes, so that wouldn't be an issue. If I'm remembering wrong, please speak up and contact me on this one, but I remember taking these measurements back when I had one of those using that combination, so that part should be fine. S-Video versus RGB or component output, since you're driving 240p, then it's not going to be as big of a jump as from something like composite video to RGB, or to composite video to S-Video, at least in my opinion, is a much more noticeable jump in quality than S-Video to RGB. So, you know, that's just something to consider. But the other factors involved are, first and foremost, are you ever going to be using this for anything other than the Game Boy interface? And if so, then it's probably better just to get the official component cables or the Carby component if you want to save some cash, and just get an NTSC one, because then you never have to worry about resolutions, compatibility, whatever else. But if it is legit only to play the Game Boy interface, which is the only reason I use mine anymore, to be honest, so I get it. The other thing you have to consider is PAL GameCubes need to have a sync on composite video RGB SCART cable. There is no C-Sync pin, which means you can't just use a cheap cable or you'll get a ton of interference. You need to get a really good shielded coax cable. I think both manufacturers make really good shielded sync-on composite versions. So you're going to need to drop at least, I would say, $30 probably after shipping on a cable for that. Maybe a little more depending on which seller you go for and what options. So getting a PAL GameCube and a really well shielded RGB cable, unless you just happen to have that same one already, or I guess maybe the universal one from Retro Gaming Cables would probably work as well. But unless you're in that exact scenario, you know, you're going to have to buy a more expensive GameCube and a cable that would probably result in the same price as just getting an NTSC GameCube and the Carby component cables. So that's why it's a bit of a complicated answer, because you have to just put all of these things together. And it's also, what kind of setup are you running? Do you plug your consoles in individually each time you use them? You mentioned you have a PVM. Do you have everything through RGB cables and want to continue to use a switch? So all of that factors in, right? So if you have a huge setup with a bunch of RGB SCART cables, maybe you have a G-SCART switch and 7 out of the 8 are taken up, maybe it is just best to get the PAL GameCube and that other cable, or to get the Eon Mark II and then buy the separate RGB cable and get it that way. But if you have the ability to route in component or S-Video, that would kind of make this choice a little easier. So, just consider the total price of everything is my best advice to you. And that, a GameCube with a good S-Video cable worth buying, yeah, S-Video cable's at least $20. So, $20, $30. Is it better to drop that now and have a spare S-Video cable? I personally would choose that, but I have a million cables. So really just take all of that into account and kind of figure out what's best. And you said a problem that I have all the time that I'm trying to get better on. You said that you'd heard me make references to these topics, but you weren't there from ground zero. And I get that, and I'm trying so hard to find a happy medium between constantly repeating myself and being able to welcome newcomers who are just stumbling across this. So anybody at all that has suggestions on this, I'm all ears. But I always try to at least make references to make things easier so people will know where to go. But in situations like this, there's no easy answer because it all depends on your setup, your budget, and how you want the overall flow of this to go. So hopefully I gave you good enough tips. Please ask again if I didn't, and I promise I will double and triple check the spam folder from now on. So also, you said you grabbed a retro RGB shirt. Thanks very much. That's really awesome. I'm always happy to hear that, and I'm still waiting for a day I randomly run into somebody wearing it. Over on Subscribestar, the importer said I was mentioned on Linus Tech Tips during their podcast. Did I loan them a modded Virtual Boy? Maybe. All kidding aside, since they made it public, I'm comfortable talking about it now. I wasn't sure if it was ever a secret, but anybody that knows me knows I'll keep my mouth shut until the very moment I'm told, I'm allowed to talk about it. But yep, I sent them a whole bunch of stuff. Supposedly they'll have a video out on it soon, and my only hope is that they kept an open mind about things, which it sounds like they did. I know they kind of mentioned that they got a headache while playing it. I never get a headache while playing Virtual Boy, but I also, every 10 minutes or so, will at least take my head out of the Virtual Boy and look around, or in Mario Tennis between matches or something, I'll take a minute to blink my eyes and go back in, but it never gives me a headache. So to each his own. Even if they decide they hate it, I never mind when people disagree with me. It really bugs me when people go into things like the Jaguar, the Virtual Boy, and all that with this pig-headed mentality of, oh, it sucks. It doesn't. It may have been a failed console, but it definitely doesn't suck. So hopefully their video will echo that at least a little bit. And I'm excited to see what they do with it. So yeah, I did lend them one, and I guess their video should be coming out soon. Next, Robert Dickinson asked if I knew whether or not the Retro Access NT Mini RGB cable would be compatible with the analog DAC. I'm going to say 99.9% yes. I bought one from Retro Access. I actually had them make me a custom one for the 32X. It is sitting over there with my 32X, sitting next to the DAC and the analog Mega SG. I will definitely be testing it as soon as I can, just to be able to verify all that. But I'm still waiting on another firmware from Kevin. Assuming I'm not cut off, assuming Analog didn't get really pissed at my honest opinion of their shipping and cut me off forever. So we'll see about that. But yeah, assuming I'm still getting a beta version of the firmware, I will let everybody know what's up with the pinout, 32X support, and everything else. And even if I'm, for whatever reason, not allowed to talk about anything, which, I'm always careful about that, I'm positive that they'll allow me to say if it works with the same cable or not. But once again, 99.9% yes, you can use the same cable. Next, a question from Joaquin Coelho, and please let me know if I said that right. I'm always trying, and I'm getting better. But the question is, they're having a lot of issues daisy chaining a few Bandridge SCART switches, and want to know if a G-SCART switch is a good choice. So yes, 100%, but allow me to elaborate. So I've always run into issues with Bandridge switches. I think I only had one of my own, but in all of the testing my friends have done and all of the corresponding between people, there's a chance that you get one of these things. You cut a trace on the motherboard to reduce interference, and it either works fine or it doesn't. But that's not good enough for me when there's other choices out there. That's why I talk about the Otaku Switch as being a direct replacement for the Bandridge, designed for retro gaming by the community, and it doesn't have any issues like that. So there's a lot of people out there that swear by the Bandridge and say I'm crazy, but I just, time and time again, I have proof like this that they have issues. So I'm sure when you picked them up, it was a great starter switch. So you certainly didn't make a mistake by any means. But yes, now you're reaching the territory where you'd want to upgrade to a Switch that has everything that you would need. And you said you got a bunch of Pack-a-Punch cables from Retro Gaming Cables on a CDX, NES, Saturn, Dreamcast, and Core Graphics plus SSD S3. So all of those should work flawlessly, except the Core Graphics and SSD S3. That should be okay. Should. But there's been issues with PC Engine Core Graphics signals, and sometimes, depending on your display, it gets weird. My guess, if I had to bet, and I'm not usually a betting man, but my bet would be that 99% chance it'll work no problem through the G-SCART switch, but I just wanted to put that out there because I've seen PC Engine signals do crazy things before. But the short version, it sounds like you're doing everything right. You started out with a good starter switch. That's certainly good enough. Now it's time to move on to a more pro piece of equipment, and the G-SCART switch is absolutely my recommendation on what to get. So give it a shot and let me know if there's any compatibility issues, but you should be fine with the Core Graphics. Another question about the analog DAC. Doomleg wants to know if the Mr. SCART cable will work on the DAC, and I don't think so, because Mr. outputs RGB via the VGA port's RGB and horizontal sync pins, and when you use the analog DAC, it reacts the same as the analog NT Mini in that I can't use a VGA to 4 BNC cable. I need to use a VGA and a 5 BNC cable, which means that things are either pinned different or it requires components in the cable. Now, once again, I really need to triple and quadruple check everything. I want to get the last version of the firmware before I start making any solid statements like that. But my gut would tell me that no, you're not going to be able to do that. You would have to use a different cable. But once again, wait till the final firmware is out just to make sure. Tofu Man wanted to chime in regards to the lag testing discussion from last week, and just wanted to remind people to still try and get a feel for the gameplay, even if there is a bit of lag that you've measured. And I agree to a point. I mean, anytime you measure any kind of lag, I would definitely be wary of what it is that you're using. But at the end of the day, it might or might not hurt your experience. And the best example I could give is like my OLED TV. It looks great. I got it super cheap because it was a floor model. And yeah, it's got 2 to 3 frames of lag. And every time I do a firmware update, the lag changes on it in game mode. But for me, it's never enough to ruin what I'm trying to do. So Switch plays perfect on it because Switch is designed to be played on flat screens. And going through the analog consoles, the Super NT and the Mega SG, it's good enough for me where if I just want to kind of chill and play for a while, it's not too terrible. But I still, whenever I really want to get into playing, like you'll never see me play MK or MK3 on my OLED, or actually probably any flat screen TV. Or if I really wanted to sit down and drop a couple hours and just play, I would want to make sure to have the best experience possible. So yeah, if you have a TV that you're using, especially if it's a TV, because that's such a big thing that's hard to upgrade. If you got a TV that you're using that's got lag, just give it a chance and see if it's good enough for you. But on the other side of that, don't buy a cheap scaler and say, I'll see if the lag's good enough. You'll end up hating it. So thanks for chiming in, though. Well, that's it for this week. Any questions at all, please just post them wherever the newest Q&A is, wherever it is that you support. The way this works, I can't really sort back through, and as we learned before, apparently I was forgetting to even check the spam filterings. Sorry about that. Once again, I'll try to make sure that doesn't happen again. But yep, just post in the newest Q&A post wherever it is that you subscribe. I turn the comments off on YouTube because this really is just a way for me to say thank you and to interact with all of the amazing supporters out there that are keeping this channel and all of these videos going. Also, stay tuned for the videos that I got coming up in the next week. I'm very excited about them, and I hope you all enjoy them. There's a short, fun one, and then a couple of more interesting ones, let's just say. But as always, thanks so much for your support, and I'll see you next time.